Metadata Utility description. Let's take a look at the final portion at the bottom, where we have the buttons as edit record, add new, media, events, lastly, close button. Self-explanatory, marked with number 32, button, edit record, allows users to set the main window, metadata utility, in edit mode. Once in edit mode, we will see that most of the fields that are editable, or actually all the fields that are editable, will be featured with a yellow background. The next button, marked with number 33, is the Add New button that is designed for when users have a record that they want to add an additional and use the existing information to create what is called a child record. This is particularly applicable when we have, for example, movie sets such as, let's say, Last Samurai or Batman movies or Aliens or what have you. Movies that come with, say, a letterbox format, 16:9, and they come also with a television format, 4:3, and they have with a third DVD with the extras. For that particular movie set, although we have 3 different DVDs, the cast, director, date of release, all of that information is the same. And for that particular case, in which we will have 3 different ripped folders in our network attached storage or Windows partition, we will need to create 3 different unique XML IDs. And on description of the XML IDs and why they have to be unique, we have a separate video on that. But for that particular case, users may need to add what we call an additional record, but they want to use the existing information because it's basically the same. So that's what this button is made for. The next button, which is the one that we're going to be concentrating more, is the media button. That enables to switch between the different queues that Metadata Utility offers. Let's look at the first one. If we click on the button called Media, we will see that Metadata Utility on the top, where we have the title Metadata Utility, will switch to a new view, so to speak, and it will automatically show the entire media library, which is current to reflect the actual movies that a user has available in their movie library. Once that button was clicked and Windows or Metadata Utility was showing the Windows Media Center media library, we will see that the button, now marked with number 36, shows a different name called Pending. The pending queue is designed to hold records from which the metadata information was downloaded, but the user does not currently have that movie in the library. That's pretty much kind of like a wish list. So users have built in a list of movies that they want to get, and therefore they have pre-downloaded the metadata information, but that movie information should not be attempted to be synchronized with Windows Media Center. If a user tries, they will get errors and they will be cataloging within Windows. Not only Windows Media Center generates also a unique set of errors, but Metadata Utility as well. So if we actually click on that button to switch to the pending queue, we will see that Metadata Utility switches on that main view to now the title Metadata Utility Pending Records, as we have now marked with number 37. And in this particular example, we're going to notice that for those records from which the information has been pre-downloaded into Metadata Utility, there will be a number of fields, as we see in this example, marked with number 38, the title sub, which is abbreviation for title supplemental, which, as we have mentioned before, title supplemental is the actual name of the movie as we have it displayed in Windows Media Center. And we will go into the live example to show that to users very shortly. As well as that field will be empty, as well as the WMC ID will be missing, as well as one of the two ID link fields will be empty as well. And on the bottom of the form, we will see some field data information also missing, which is, for the particular case of pending records, completely normal. The XML ID is non-existent, as well as there is no CHK value, and the path builder has not been built. Purpose for this is, again, it's a pre-downloaded information, but the movie has not been obtained. The movie does not exist in the Windows Media Center movie library. Therefore, we have only pre-cached, pre-downloaded the information. Moving on to the next, if we actually now click on the button that now indicates selected, we will see that once that is clicked, Metadata Utility will switch to the very next queue, which is called the selected records, as we see with the marked number 39, which is designed particularly to show those records from which a user wants to take an action, whether it's to download movie information, whether it's to generate XML information to synchronize with Windows Media Center, or to recache existing previously created movie information and action. And that is basically created, this queue, by the CHK field that we have at the bottom of the main window in Metadata Utility. We will see that is marked with a -1, and that is simply selected by clicking the button that now reads unselect. Once that is clicked, it will generate that value. Users have the capability to either insert the -1 manually or click on the button to select those records. This is particularly important when users have more than one movie that they want to edit, change, add metadata information. For one movie, it's relatively very simple, but if a user had, for example, added 10 movies or 15 movies, or they have a group of movies, let's say a group of movies was moved from a particular Windows partition to an external USB drive, or has been moved to a network attached storage, and now we are just wanting to update that metadata and resync it to Windows Media Center. And so we have moved, let's say, 50 or 100 movies or more. The intention with this powerful feature from Metadata Utility is that a user doesn't have to do the same task 50 times, meaning select one record, synchronize it, then go to the next record and synchronize it. Simply, a user can search for the movies, click on select, and build a queue, what is called a selected records queue. And once that is ready, simply carry out the desired action, whether it's to download movie information, whether it's to synchronize it with Windows Media Center or download cover art, etc. if no records are selected, when that selected queue is clicked, then the user will have a blank window. So here we're showing a case in which there are no selected records. Worth to note that if we selected a record, as we see here, let's go back, and we selected one record, then that record will be shown, or records will be shown in this selected records queue. Once that we're in this selected records queue, we will see that the bottom button now has a label of suspect. And once that suspect button is clicked, Metadata Utility will switch to the suspect records queue, which is similar to the selected records queue. This particular queue is designed when problems occur. So though we hope that most of our users will never have problems, eventually they can happen. For example, a movie was deleted or moved from one location to the other, or information is missing. There are several different situations that can happen. Or there's a duplicate record and the user sees what is called a ghost or phantom movie. They don't know what's going on. Metadata Utility runs a series of checks, and if one of those checks fails, Metadata Utility will automatically mark those records and assign them to this suspect records queue. So this is an easier way for users to simply navigate to the suspect records queue, and then instead of having to go through the entire, let's say we have 1,000 or 10,000 movies, the users will have to randomly start clicking on each and every movie and then click on events button to see whether there's an error, instead of having to do that 1,500 times or 10,000 times, one time for each movie. They simply navigate to the suspect records queue, and all those suspect records will be automatically cataloged in this view. And hopefully no user has to ever have problems, but on those users that have had problems in the past, this is one of the most powerful features that allows them to single out those movies that are actually causing a problem. And then they can further troubleshoot by clicking on events and further analyze what is the cause of the problem and the solution. Obviously, we have a detailed video on how to repair suspect records, and for those users that are particularly interested on that topic, we would recommend that they will actually go into our other topics that we have available on video tutorials and click on that particular video as well, or visit our website also for detailed information. Now, moving on, as we will see once that we're in the suspect records, if there are none, then it will be a blank window, or the fields may be also blanked because there are no records assigned to the suspect records queue. And we will see that the button now marked with number 42 will have a different value called orphan. And if we actually clicked on the orphan and we actually go to the orphan records queue, we will see that now Metadata Utility shows in the title Metadata Utility Orphan Records Queue marked with 43. And as we see in this example, we have now marked with number 44 a number of fields that are actually missing data. This is typically when the users have deleted information, whether it was on purpose or by accident. As we mentioned in several other videos before, though we do not recommend users to simply delete data, we recommend normally users to archive records so that the records are still available. But if for some reason a record was deleted and that was not the intention, users may create what is called orphan records. That means the movie exists in Windows Media Center, but for some reason the user either by accident or on purpose, deleted the entire metadata. As we see here, marked with number 44, title is missing, date of release is missing, cast, director, genre, overview, tagline, duration, studio, data provider, MPAA rating, community rating, and provider rating is all missing. And we only have some pieces of left out data, such as the title supplemental, which we described before as the actual name of the title of the movie as we want to have it displayed in Windows Media Center. And we see that one of the ID linked fields is also missing. And we see some pieces left over, such as the XML ID is still left over. And we see the CHK field marked with 1. Records normally marked with 1 are particularly records that were suspect records. So records that we always see with 1 are records that landed in the suspect records queue. And we have had the situation where a user had the records in suspect before, and they said, okay, I'll fix it. I'll just delete the record from Metadata Utility, and the problem is gone. And so they did in this particular example, and now the record went from being a suspect to now being what is called an orphan record. That means, for this particular example, the user deleted the metadata, but the movie is still found in Windows Media Center. So that's when users, for example, have some movies in Windows Media Center not properly showing the cover art, or not showing properly the metadata movie detail information, or a variation of both. Sometimes they have what is called ghosted movies, meaning that, let's say a user has, let's pretend a user has just one movie in their movie library, and the movie is called Aliens, or the second movie in the franchise. But when they open Windows Media Center, instead of seeing Aliens once, they see Aliens 2, 3, or more times. And in some cases, if they click on each one of those duplicate movies, they all ended up landing onto the same movie, meaning that they can launch the movie. If the movie is listed 4 times, they can launch the movie 4 times, and they go, why am I seeing the movie 4 times? It should be only once. Or examples in which they click on one and one works, the other one doesn't. Or one is showing movie information, the other one isn't, and variations of what we just described. So it can be a number of issues. That was always the cause. Either the record was a suspect record that the user neglected or ignored, or the user thought, I'll fix it very quickly, I'll just delete the record from Metadata Utility, problem solved. And later they open Windows Media Center and they go, oh my God, the problem's still there. That's what this particular queue is meant for. We have also a detailed video and tutorial step-by-step on our website at metadatautility.com, where we show how to fix these types of scenarios. Now, moving on to the next possible queue, as we see at the bottom, is called, or abbreviated with LOS, which stands for Last Online Search. And if we click on it, we will see that Metadata Utility will show now the title Metadata Utility Last Online Search. And this queue is particularly designed to hold records that we have recently searched online. Metadata Utility comes with a pre-built online search tool. And as a way to help users identify, especially when users have many records. Let's pretend for those cases on which users are building for the first time their entire metadata library, or they have massive changes, and so let's say they've searched for 10 movies, 100 movies. And so after they've searched that information and downloaded the appropriate information onto their metadata database, which is stored locally on the computer. This queue is designed to actually, by just simple click to allow the users to just quickly see in this particular queue all those records that were searched and downloaded very easily. And still, instead of I just downloaded 100 movies and I have to search each time for each and every single one of those movies, which can be tedious, and a user may not remember all the 100 movies that they just downloaded. That's what this queue is meant for. In this particular case, we don't see anything because we didn't search anything. And lastly, but not least, we have now the button marked with archive that was previously marked with LOS. If we actually click on that, now we will go into the archive queue. And we will notice that the archived records have the CHK value with a number 2. This is the default behavior that we encourage our users to always manage their metadata information. This is particularly useful when, for example, let's say a user has deleted a movie from their Windows Media Center library. For whatever reason, they didn't like the movie, they don't have enough space, the movie is defective, they may rip or download the movie later, but for the time being they go, I don't want this movie in my library, bye-bye. So the movie was deleted, but the metadata information is still within Metadata Utility. So to the users, we always encourage better set that record to archive, meaning that Metadata Utility will not be using that information to try to synchronize that with Windows Media Center, because obviously if the movie has been deleted and Metadata Utility attempts to create metadata for that movie, it will generate an error. So this is a way to move it aside, but keep the data still. We always recommend this feature to be used for 2 reasons. One, move the data to archive, let's say for a week or 2 or a month, and if after the month the user is absolutely certain, okay, I will not be getting that movie, I just don't like it, or it will not be part of my library, then after a month, user can still go to those archived records and remove them from the metadata library. But if for some reason the movie is obtained again, purchased again, or downloaded again, then instead of having to re-download the entire movie information, have to run the entire process of synchronizing the information again. If the information is already on the archive records queue, it's just one click away to resync everything with Windows Media Center, just as easy. We will see that when we are in this queue, the button at the bottom now reads all records. And if we click on it, we will actually go back to show now the title and Metadata Utility to show all records. This is basically showing all possible records that Metadata Utility may offer. And as we mentioned before, we have also within the all records queue, just as a point of reference, the main difference between the all records queue and all the other queues is that this particular queue is showing everything. This queue is showing the existing Windows Media Center metadata library, is showing the pending records. That means records that from which we have yet to add to the Windows Media Center library. It's showing the selected records queue. It's also showing the suspect records, as well as it's showing any possible orphan records, as well as showing any of the previously last online search records. as well as the archive records, meaning all the previous 7 queues are combined in one single view, which is called the all records queue, and it's being shown here. So that a user can navigate freely in one single window and see everything. And we will see, obviously, that in that all records queue, as we will transition to show, if we navigate to a movie on which we have a pending record queue marked with number 46, we see those values that are actually missing because that record hasn't been downloaded. Similarly, we have the next button that we have at the bottom of the form called the Events button, which is designed to help users troubleshoot issues that may have arisen with their Windows Media Center library. In this particular example, we're showing an action was taken, and on this particular record, it says, as we see the case event type is number 76, path or file not found. And if we actually double click on the description, we will see that it actually indicates the details of the problem that occurred. In this particular case, is saying Metadata Utility XML file generated and indicates as the event type path or file not found, and it's showing the actual path in which it failed to generate a record. So for purposes of extensive granular troubleshooting, this is what actually enables users to easily find what the cause is. Users here seeing, for example, a path C:\D basis / etc. They will go and say, well, that path is incorrect. I should have my NAS, as we see at the bottom of the main window path builder, we just corrected it. So this would be a very easy way for users to see where the error actually resides. If they actually see that the path to the movie is incorrect, they can go and take the corrective action instead of having to double guess as to what could possibly be wrong. Now, let's take a look at our live example so that we can actually show the users what we're talking about. Here we have our main application, and let's try to go into the closer to take a look at it. As we see here we have our main application opened at this moment, and as we navigate through the fields, we see this particular database of metadata information has over than 1,000 movies. And if we actually click on, let's click on the edit just to show users. When we click on edit, we will see all the possible editable fields are automatically marked with a background, a yellow background. That means the user knows that they can be edited. If we click on the path tab, we see all the records that are grayed out mean they can be edited because they are dynamically, as we have mentioned in videos before, they are dynamically built based on the path builder that we have selected. If I actually change here a value, let's change to A. If we go to path, we will see that it changed to A, as well as video TS, folder, etc. Let's change it back to 0. And notice that when we make that change, it actually automatically changed the value to selected to -1, where it was 0 before. Meaning that when we do changes, when we do edits on a record, Metadata Utility automatically will set that record to the selected records queue. So it's an easier way for users to do their edits, and they will automatically have a selected records queue. Now, let's notice in the path at the bottom, last 2 records are editable. We can write what we want. So if there are any changes that are desired to be made, they can be made. Now, if we navigate to a next record, either by just clicking or using the keyboard drop down, we will see the record is automatically locked and saved. We go back, we will see the record's still completely saved, but it's still marked on the selected records queue. So ideally, users will actually navigate through their records, and this is a good example that we're going to show here. For example, let's look at we're now looking at this James Bond movies. And as we see here, starting with Dr. No, for this particular user, it has the desire to show all the James Bond movies, because one movie, for example, the first one is called Dr. No. The second one is called From Russia with Love. And because the movies are automatically sorted alphabetically in Windows Media Center, to basically try to navigate through the James Bond movies, user will have to navigate all over the entire Windows Media Center library. So to ease their navigation and cluster the movies together, the user had the idea, okay, I'm going to name my movies, all of them starting with 007 and followed by the actual title of the movie. So when Windows Media Center sorts, it will find all the 007s together and display them easily. So in this particular example, we see that the user purchased a movie set from all the 00 films, in which they always came with a, let's see, here we have a 007 Dr. No, and then they have a second DVD with extras, and that pretty much repeats, as we see here, with each and every one. As we see here, purposely the user, instead of naming the movie 16:9, on purpose for this example, we name it even not accurately to represent the 16:9, meaning that the user will see exactly what they typed on Windows Media Center. But they can do that through the entire movie. That means that every movie can be named as the user wants that movie to be shown. So this is a good example to show why the title supplemental field is necessary, so that for those movies in which they have more than one DVD, they can properly rename each one of them. Let's look at, for example, another good example would be The Last Samurai. If we search for The Last Samurai. So in this particular case, The Last Samurai, instead of the user having the movie starting with The Last Samurai, which means that as the alphabetical naming would go, Windows Media Center will try to cluster all the movies with the at the beginning, so they could have The Last Samurai, The Client, and so forth and so forth. So the user decided to rename it Last Samurai, the. But for this particular example, it was a movie set as well, in which it comes in a television format, 4:3. It comes, again, for this particular example, we chose to change from Last Samurai, and instead of 16:9, on purpose, write 9:6, so that users can see that we can enter a custom name that is desired. And there is even a third DVD, as we see, there's a third record, as we see here. If we go to the third record, there's a third DVD with the extras. So this is one of the powerful features that we have with the title supplemental, and the reason why it exists. But again, going back to our entire movie library, here we're seeing all the records, and that will be, as we said, including the records that we have in our selected record queue, suspect records queue. We're seeing everything at this time. If we actually click on the button, go to media, we will see it cycles through just the media queue. This is the Windows Media Center movie library. As we see, there are 1,300 records instead of prior we had 1,400 something. And that means each of these records is found in Windows Media Center. That means that they are properly generated, they are properly created, they are properly synchronized. If we click on the button, we cycle to the next possible queue, which we see here is the pending records queue. And in this particular queue, we're showing the records that, as we said before, movies that are, we have here 84 records. That means movies that we want to get, that the user has pre-selected, pre-downloaded information, but those movies do not yet exist in their Windows library. But the movie data, metadata has been downloaded and pre-selected. That will have a list of all the movies that the user wants to get. Now, if we were to cycle through to the next queue, which is a selected records queue, so we see here at the top of the form, we see Metadata Utility pending records. But the bottom of the form here, we see the button now for the next possible queue is the selected records queue. And if we click on it, we will see the record that we were just talking a moment ago is now landed in this record set, because we did a change. As we remember, we changed from 0 to A, and the record automatically landed in the selected records queue. If we don't need it there, because we don't want to sync the data, simply click on unselect, and the record will be sent back to the normal metadata library. If we click one more time, we will go to now suspect records queue. This particular case, as we described a moment ago, because in this particular case we don't have any errors, we don't have any problems, we see a blank field pretty much. Now, it's worth noting that next possible queue, it will be the orphan records queue. And if we click there, we would actually, same as we saw before, if we had any issues with the metadata library, those records will be shown here. The next will be actually the last online search. This particular case, again, because we haven't searched anything, nothing is being shown. And lastly would be our archive records queue. And here we have a good example of a movie that has been deleted from the Windows Media Center movie library, but the user is choosing still to retain that data because it's not sure. Maybe I will get the DVD, maybe I will buy it again, maybe I will download the movie in the near future. And in that particular case, is retaining the data. That can be deleted if the user is certain. And at this moment, this movie, though is still within Metadata Utility, will not be impacted when movie synchronization is processed through Windows Media Center or updates or any kind of maintenance in their Windows Media Center movie library. And last, we have, if we click the button one more time, we will go into the all records queue. Now, as we can see, this single button changes dynamically name and it cycles through the queues. Let's go one more time from the media, as the title. If we click one more time, it goes to the pending. If we click one more time, it goes to selected records. If we click one more time, it goes to the suspect records. If we click one more time, it goes to the orphan records. If we click one more time, it goes to the last online search records. If we click one more time, it goes to the archive records. And so just to have an example as to how it works when we actually have a searched records, let's go back to the bigger view and let's search on purpose for a false movie, and we say yes, we want to search for a false movie here. And now we're gonna type in here, we're gonna search for Backdraft. Once the movie information has been downloaded, as we noticed, the movie's information is there. Once that information has been uploaded into the main Metadata Utility database, which is done just by either clicking on the record and selecting upload, or clicking on select to select all, or in this particular case, if we want to unselect, we just click on the ID field and say unselect all records. We can unselect them, but let's say that we have already selected the chosen records and added them. In this particular case, this record already exists in the database. So if we actually try to upload them and click on upload, it will say no records available for upload because they already exists for this user's database. But this was an example so that we can show the selected records queue and how it works with the last selected online search records. So let's unselect them. Let's just leave them in the queue, and let's close, and let's cycle through the actual buttons. Let's go to the media. Let's go to the pending records queue. Let's go to select the record queue. We remove the previous record from that queue. Let's go to the suspect records. We don't have anything. Let's go to the orphan records. We don't have any problem. And now let's go to the last search, online search queue. And when we do that, automatically, bam, we will land into the records that we just searched. We have previously searched for Backdraft, and as we can see here, the record already exists in Windows Media Center as well as in Metadata Utility, and we can quickly navigate through them and see the data that we have. We can also clearly see that we have renamed the actual record from Backdraft to Backdraft 01 for the first one that was done in 1991, and for the second one that was just done last year. So this is a quick example to show users how powerful this one single view is to manage their movie library. And lastly, if we click archive, we will go and see the actual archive records. And let's go back into the zoomed version. And lastly, if we click on all records, we see here all possible records. So here again, if we start to navigate, we will see we have all the movies that we downloaded. But if we can actually keep moving, we eventually will land into movies that we have on the pending records queue. For example, in this particular case, we saw before that we had the 007, the Never Say Never Again, that movie that was part of our pending records queue. And we can see we have title supplemental as well as XML ID, CHK, path builders. They do not exist yet because that movie has not been added to Windows Media Center. But in this all records queue, we're seeing everything. Same thing as if we try to search for movies that were on the Orphan records queue, they will all be shown here. Again, for this particular example, because we don't have any Orphan records or we don't have any selected records or pending records, therefore those records will not be shown particularly here. But this is to show how powerful it is. With one single interface, a user can navigate by just clicking one button and navigate through either a particular queue, all records, all in one single view, do their actions, and then synchronize and carry the necessary action in Windows Media Center. For more information on any of these features that we just described, as well as to detailed information step by step, how to synchronize their Windows Media Center movie library to show the detailed description as we see here, we welcome for our users to either click on any of our other available videos that we have available, as well as to visit us at our website at metadatautility.com for more information. We thank you for watching.